Hello, you're watching the Football Diary podcast once again. Thank you so much for joining us. We're looking at the highlights of the Premier League weekend once again. Plenty to pick through. And to be honest, that's going to include quite a bit around Steven Gerrard, which I'm sure Myles, who's joining me today, will be thrilled to talk about. He grabbed another win, his second in a row for his new look Aston Villa team. I say new look. Is it new look? That's what we'll be discussing later. Also, Arsenal, the young Arsenal team, keep grinding out some impressive results, although 2-0 against this Newcastle team wasn't that impressive. But consistency is there for the Gunners, which we'll also discuss in a moment. And Manchester United have appointed Ralph Rangnick as their interim manager until the end of the season, with a view to moving upstairs at the end of that once a permanent appointment's been made. So loads of discussion points, but we'll start at Selhurst Park, Myles, if you will. So we've got Aston Villa up and running again with the second victory of the Gerrard era. Still sounds weird to say that. Have you seen much change in the Aston Villa setup? I mean, he played Ashley Young in an advanced position alongside Ollie Watkins. Leon Bailey got a start. How did it look to you, mate?
Do you know what? Really encouraging, actually. I'm glad to be able to come on and speak positively about Gerrard so early, because it seems that both the wins that we've got have come from things that he has implemented rather than just the quality of the players, for example. So obviously I mentioned that in the Brighton game, his substitutions worked really well, and tactically he got that right. And a big thing in that was Ashley Young. So it wasn't a surprise to see him start. From everything I'm hearing, Ashley Young is training incredibly well. He's got some of the best fitness in the entire squad, apparently, even at his age. Wow. His ability on the ball looks incredibly good. I mean, he got another assist today, so that's 2 games in a row now, which is fantastic for him. And I think Gerrard really rates him. It's obviously someone Gerrard knows. They actually played together at England, so they've obviously got a relationship and a dynamic there already. I wouldn't be surprised to see him potentially even take the armband, which I'd be disappointed to see it taken off Mings, but Gerrard has said that he will decide his own captain. Yeah. But I think Gerrard got the selection really right, but not just the selection, the way in which they played. They attacked wide and defended narrow, and it was really impressive to see them very aware of their opponent, but also not let that dictate the way they played going forward. So I think when a lot of people think about Crystal Palace, the immediate threat is Wilf Zaha. But actually this season, most of their threat has come through the middle with the likes of Conor Gallagher. True. So I noticed that when Palace had the ball, Bailey and Young both tucked in a lot. They moved centrally and defended in numbers in the middle of the park. Right. And along with that, Jacob Ramsey dropped a bit deeper, and they just completely overloaded Palace in midfield. Palace were awful that first half. This was the Palace side that I kind of expected to see at the start of the season, and they've massively outperformed that so far. And credit to them, but I did not see this great Palace side that Vieira's produced in this game, because Villa just nullified any threat they had. They were quite dirty at times, Palace. There were definitely moments where I thought the game might escalate into something more. Zaha clashed with Matty Cash at one point. Milivojevic, I still think probably could have been sent off. But Villa just dictated the game. Even when they weren't on the ball, they controlled what Palace were allowed to do with it. And I credit it to the tactics that Gerrard put in, because they just swarmed that midfield and just dominated, really. It was really impressive.
I'm interested to see your take on Ashley Young's revival, because as a United fan, when we were seeing the last days of his time with us, he was woefully poor. He played in a defensive sort of wing-back position. He'd kind of been switched to that position because of his advanced years. Obviously, he wasn't quite the flying winger that he used to be. So, I mean, there's a game that sticks in my mind where we played against Barcelona and got absolutely outclassed in both legs. And he was like the epitome of everything that was wrong with United at the time. So to see him back in the Premier League, for me, I'll have to say, was a big surprise. But to see him actually being a central part of a Gerrard team is even more surprising. What's happened there?
It's a credit to the professional, definitely. He's loved at Villa, obviously, for his first spell there. He was absolutely mesmerizing to watch at times. I have such fond memories of watching Ashley Young play. So when we signed him back, there was a lot of logic to it in my mind. There was the nostalgia element, of course, where the fans were always going to receive him well. He clearly cares about the club, and that's the kind of people you want at the club. Bear in mind, this was a Villa club at the time that was built around Dean Smith and Jack Grealish both being Villa fans. Anyone that can appreciate the philosophy and the foundation of the club is welcome. So there was that. There was his experience that he was bringing into what is quite a young squad still, to be honest. he had just won a title in Italy. He'd won trophies with Man United and obviously trained at one of the highest levels possible. So it made sense to bring him in to help the development of other players. Plus, we just lost two fullbacks to contract expiry who weren't good enough, but we definitely needed cover. And Ashley Young is so versatile that he can I thought that was why we signed him, to be honest, to help Target and Cash progress and to cover both positions. Maybe challenge them every now and again, but squad rotation. So seeing him in an attacking position is really interesting to me because he's not the lightning quick Ashley Young that we remember from his first spell at Villa, but his footballing brain has improved massively. He really seems intelligent on the ball. He seems to be very aware of how Watkins moves and Bailey moves, and he's really found a home again at Villa where he's not just the aging veteran. He's someone that's there to lead. And I'm really glad to see him with a leadership role. I think Gerrard clearly respects him as the professional he is because of the career he's had. But that's not enough to get you into a starting 11. And Villa actually have quite a lot of wingers. All right, we have a few people injured. But let's not forget, Danny Ings and Buendia didn't play in this game. Ashley Young was picked in an attacking position. That's on merit. And he showed it again. So long may it continue, to be honest, because he's offering something that not many players have this season.
Fair comment, to be honest. I don't know if this is controversial at all. We've talked about the balance in the Villa team all season, it feels like, since Grealish left. Especially, I mean, the back five picks itself, doesn't it? The goalkeeper and the defence itself is absolutely set in stone, which is great. But the midfield combinations, especially the forward combinations, now you've got Buendia, you've got Ings, you've got Bailey, have always been a bit like, well, how do we fit these players in? I actually felt like Buendia and Ings not being available made it easier to pick a more balanced team. How did Bailey look on the right-hand side of the attack? Did he look more kind of at home without those players in the picture?
It wasn't his strongest performance, I'll be honest, but he still looked threatening. He still looks the best attacking option we have, in my opinion, other than Ollie Watkins, obviously. But on that wing, he starts every game for me. I don't think there's a conversation about it. It was interesting to see him do the defensive side of things. Because what's really good about Bailey is, I'm glad and I hope this persists, he's not afraid to drop a bit deeper and pick the ball up. And he's so calm on the ball that even if players are surrounding him, he doesn't rush, he doesn't panic. And I've seen that a few times from some of the wingers Villa have. Now, I'll be honest, when everyone is fit, I'm excited by the wide options that Aston Villa have. Because there are players that you forget about. Trezeguet is still there, who is indifferent for Villa, but has scored some big goals.
I completely forgot about him, mate.
Exactly. Yeah, he's had a long injury, but he's still there. Bertrand Traore was a huge signing last summer and has shown moments of real class. So the more competition we have for those positions, the better in my mind. But Bailey, to me, has cemented his place in there. I think the main thing for this was, and why Bailey and Young did so well, is because our weakest thing, in my opinion, this season has been our midfield, and particularly the creativity in midfield. So although John McGinn is playing out of his skin, that's the area we need to develop. And seeing Young and Bailey support that midfield by being a bit more narrow, it made such a difference. They were fantastic. Now, we kind of got away with one because Douglas Luiz obviously got a red card and VAR overturned it. It was not a red card. He didn't make anywhere near enough contact to think of it as a red.
No.
And that could have completely changed the dynamic of the game. But I was really happy with what I saw in the middle of the park. And that's the first time I've said that for a while. I'm just gutted we didn't keep the clean sheet, because 2 clean sheets in a row would have been such a boost for that back line.
Yeah, I think that's just a concentration thing, isn't it? Probably a bit of fatigue as well. Like you said, the international break seemed to sap the energy from the players last week. Maybe they're still recovering a little bit. Who knows? But it was weird to see 2 Premier League legends on the touchline, wasn't it? Vieira and Gerrard both standing there. So very interesting to see them in management. But also...
it's a good opportunity to take stock of what that means for the Premier League right now, because it's not just the new manager sort of cycle in the league has kind of changed what everyone expected at the start of the season. I think we both talked about, we didn't know what to expect from Palace. They lost a lot of their squad. They brought in a manager that's untested at that level, and he's actually doing a very good job with them. This was not an example of that, but he is doing a good job. So Gerrard has a lot to kind of compete with in the league, because the age profile of a lot of the managers is getting lower. And when we'll talk about United in a bit, of course, but the fact that there isn't really that high level management that's there right now for the taking. The elite level managers, you can kind of count on two hands now across world football. That we've seen people like Mourinho drop off. Conte is now at Spurs, which is, you wonder what level that is. Ancelotti's getting older. Juventus are doing badly. So who are the elite managers in football right now? This new school of the likes of Arteta, Vieira, Gerrard. It'll be interesting to see where they push on and whether they can compete with that level or not. Because why not? It's there for the taking. And all of a sudden, the club's going to start to be able to progress. We're seeing the back of people like Pardew in the English game. So it's nice to see this young generation come through and actually play good football. And I credit Gerrard and Vieira with that so far.
Yeah, it's taken some guts as well from, I think, the leadership of the Premier League teams to kind of give a chance to someone like Vieira, who, let's face it, has got an up and down managerial record up to now, but has been given a very sort of weird hand. I think he started off in the States, didn't he, in the Major League, and then moved to France. So a mixed bag for him. But yeah, he's beyond all expectations so far for Palace, I think it's fair to say. Gerrard remains to be seen in the Premier League, but in Scotland, obviously, did brilliantly to get the title. Speaking of midfielders, though, I was trying to figure out what the best combination for Villa still is, because clearly McGinn has to be the player they build the team around, doesn't he? He's just an all-action Steven Gerrard style midfielder, isn't he? Fantastic. He put in a wicked performance again today, didn't he? This week,
he's outstanding. He's comfortably the best player that Villa have right now. And it's funny because that's what everyone in Scotland said about him. When Villa signed him, the comparisons were all Gerrard. So seeing the fact that he will now be coached by that man, like, you can only see his career kicking on from strength to strength. His finish was lovely, but more than that, how dynamic he is in the middle of the park is incredible. And it's almost to his detriment, because I think he would really benefit from playing further forward. But he's just so committed and is such a workhorse that he'll get back so often that I don't think we always see the best of McGinn. When he plays for Scotland, he plays with McTominay or some of the other Scottish midfielders who are a bit tougher in the middle of the park. So he has the license to get forward a bit more, and he scores a lot more goals. So it was nice to see him in an attacking position in this game. In terms of Villa's midfield, Jacob Ramsey staying in the side, even while Smith has gone, really surprised me at first. But obviously Gerrard sees something in him. And I actually think his two best performances have come in the last two games. So it'd be good to see what Gerrard could get out of him. I think Nakamba does a great job. He's not an elite level midfielder, but he does what he needs to do, gets himself about, makes the challenges. Interceptions are fantastic. Douglas Luiz is a classy player, but it still doesn't feel very balanced.
No.
I don't feel like they know how to play with each other still. There's not a system in that midfield. There's three very individual players that it makes sense for them to go together because they have really different skill sets, but they've not worked out how to gel yet. And that's weird because it's not changed from last season. The only difference is they brought in Morgan Sanson and he's not played. So that's Gerrard's biggest task at Villa, sort the midfield out. The defence will sort itself out with a bit of coaching because we saw how outstanding they were last season. I've already talked about the wealth of attacking options we have. Midfield is where Gerrard's got focus, and what better area would you want Steven Gerrard to focus on? But it's amazing seeing how quickly things turn around. Like, we talked about how ironic it was that 6 weeks ago or 7 weeks ago now, Dean Smith was beating Man United at Old Trafford, and now he's Norwich manager, and that's how quickly football turns around. Well, all of a sudden, if Villa hadn't conceded that goal against Palace, and in fact, I think if they'd scored one more, it would have put them in the top half. On goal difference, it would have put them above Palace. So that's how quick things have changed. Gerrard's only the second Villa manager ever to win his first two Premier League games behind John Gregory. So we've got three really difficult games now. We've got City this week. He needed to win those first two games. He really, really did. Otherwise, you're on a very, very difficult start. We're not expecting to take points from our next couple of games, potentially. So I'm glad that they're in the bank. He's got time to work with the squad again now, and we'll see where we can go. But really happy with him so far, actually. It's weird to say.
I think positivity has come back to the club, which was missing from that horrible run that he went on. But I do sort of think to myself now, I realise that Villa's squad is actually pretty decent. You know, they've got some depth, and he's inherited a team of players that he can actually do something with from the start instead of bringing in any more in the transfer window. So I don't doubt that he will bring people in the transfer window. And I think midfield, like you said, is probably an area he'll look to switch up and find that balance that they're looking for. But so much more positive than it was.
He needs another midfielder, and he probably needs another fullback just to offer a bit of cover, particularly now like Cash is going on international duty as well. Obviously, that fatigue might set in. And at the moment, we have Cash on the right, Target on the left. And then if you're trying to cover fullback, it's either Ashley Young dropping in or Conser playing out of position. Right. I don't really want to see that anymore. So who knows? There's a few players at Rangers that maybe he might want to bring across. Tavernier is one of the best right backs in Scotland, definitely. And maybe beyond, I would be happy to see him come in if he wanted to bring someone across. Maybe Ryan Kent as well. There's talk of him moving back to England. It would be another attacking option maybe that Gerrard knows. So we'll see what January brings, but so far so good.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on to my team now, Manchester United. I feel like we talk about them in depth every week, but I mean, there's not a huge amount to talk about from the football side this time around. They came away from Stamford Bridge with a point, which I think anyone in the United camp would have been thrilled with. It wasn't a spectacular point. I think both teams were lucky to get the goals they did, but they soaked up so much Chelsea pressure. Yeah. So how much of the game did you see? And do you think a point is a good result for United at this stage?
It was typical of Man United over the last few years against a big team. Nothing changed tactically necessarily. They set up exactly the same, to sit deep, try and hit them on the counter when you could, break at pace. So in that respect, great, because actually Solskjaer's record against the big teams was actually quite good. It's the same coaching staff there now, very similar set of players. Obviously, there's been a couple of changes this summer, and Jadon Sancho obviously featured heavily in this game. But I'm not that surprised by it as a result, because that's what United are capable of. We just haven't seen that over the last couple of weeks against City and Liverpool. But I think Chelsea will be frustrated. Timo Werner's still not quite clicking in the way that they want him to. He probably could have won the game pretty comfortably on his own. But just credit to a couple of people in particular. David De Gea, I know we've talked about him a couple of times, but I feel like he's not got enough credit still. He's saving Man United's season single-handedly at the moment. He's been absolutely outstanding. Back to De Gea at his best. So it'd be interesting to see whether he gets a call up to Spain or not again, because he kind of fell out of favour there. And obviously seeing Sancho come in and score his first 2 United goals in the last week is fantastic. That will give him such a lift. It's not a coincidence that Solskjaer has gone and that's happening. But in terms of Chelsea, I think they'll just leave feeling very frustrated that they're now closer in a race with City, because it looked like they were going to be able to just keep going at that sort of pace. And they had chances to win it. And the goal they gave away was so silly, but Sancho took it well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the confidence that he'll get from scoring 2 goals in 2 games now, actually, including the Villarreal game, will be immense. And it's crazy that Carrick sees him in such a positive light, whereas Solskjaer didn't really, for some weird reason. So his career is only just starting with United now, I think.
The only other thing I'll say about the game, and I feel like I'm kind of about to do what I'm going to criticize a lot of people for doing, is the talking point was still Ronaldo not pressing, and he didn't even play. Now, I watched this game, or at least some of it. I don't think any of United's forwards pressed properly. Sancho does.
There's a few individual presses, but nothing as a team and nothing kind of rehearsed or drilled.
Even as an individual, did Rashford press in this game? Is Rashford the sort of player that knows what to do on a press? He runs around a lot, but he doesn't really seem to have a system there. And like you say, an individual might press, but that is pointless. If you look at any effective team, and we'll come to this with United in a minute under Rangnick, I'm sure, but any effective team that have that high press, it's a unit. So I think it was really interesting. Obviously, everyone has probably seen the Carragher and Roy Keane debate from this week, which was hilarious and comical. But again, this narrative of, but Ronaldo doesn't press and therefore he didn't play against Chelsea. I was surprised, I'll be honest. This is the kind of game I would want Ronaldo in, because you're not going to have a lot of chances. I think United had 3 attempts on goal. One of them fell to Fred, who decided to try and dink it. Now, right, Ronaldo was on the pitch at that point, but when you have a game where you're going to have limited chances, the reason you've got Ronaldo is because he's a proven goal scorer. He's going to score. So if he's worth 1 goal a game, this is the game where you want to cash that in. So I was surprised he didn't play, because if the reason to not play him was so that you could have a forward line with a bit more pace that are going to press, well, they didn't do that. So
no, I don't think that's the real reason. I think the real reason is because through the lens of performances recently and results recently, I think most United fans and probably the players were fearing an absolute drubbing at the hands of this Chelsea team because they are streets ahead of
Yeah,
United in every single way.
yeah,
So I can understand it's not Manchester United to kind of have damage limitation in mind from the first whistle, but that's definitely the way it was. I think they feared that if they were going to slip behind, especially early on, it would be a landslide again, like it was against
yeah,
Liverpool. So I get it. I totally get it. I still think Ronaldo could have made a difference for them. We snatched a very lucky goal, but I
yeah.
think if Ronaldo was on the pitch for the full 90, he'd have had more chances fall to him, definitely.
So can I ask you a question about it, weirdly? So obviously, Sky Sports has now become this vessel of being a bigger talking point than the match itself at times, and they definitely buy into that. But one of the things that Roy Keane was saying was this United team is further behind in terms of competing for the league as to where it was last season when they finished second, despite signing Ronaldo and Varane. And Carragher was arguing, why on earth do you sign Ronaldo to not win the league? Now, Keane thinks that United are at a point where they are just trying to win a trophy, to get their name back on a trophy. And that's where United are at right now. As a United fan, is that enough ambition, realistic ambition for where you are now? And do you think that that was the club's direction? Do you think that they thought they'd compete for the league this year?
Yeah, to be honest, I thought honestly back when Mourinho won the Europa League, that was the turning point, because we got a couple of trophies that season, albeit fairly small trophies.
Three,
But I
if you
thought,
ask Mourinho.
nah, not counting that. But I thought that was the turning point. But the next season, there was no investment again. It was back to square one. So I do feel like it's a case of finding that momentum again, definitely with a trophy of any kind.
Yeah.
I don't really care where it comes from either. If it's the Carabao Cup, I'll take it, to be honest, because winning is
It
a
won't be
habit.
that.
It won't be that, no. It's a habit that you build, and I think that's
Yeah.
what Roy Keane's talking about. This team doesn't look like a team that is building any kind of winning habit, and it comes from like the mentality, the confidence. But I honestly think the squad they've got at the minute, with a bit of confidence, could rule the league. Definitely, I think it only takes a run of 5 or 6 wins in a row with the kind of players they've got in the dressing room to suddenly feel a little bit invincible, especially if it's at home. And they went on this away run in front of 0 fans. So I
Yeah.
don't feel like it had any kind of impact to their aura, if you like. But
Yeah.
if they could put a run together at home and suddenly make Old Trafford a bit of a fortress again, yeah, they're competing. It's a squad that is expensively assembled. It should be competing. I just think it's confidence right now.
Well, maybe they've made a step towards that today.
Yeah, I think so. Moving nicely on, actually.
Doing your job,
Confirmed
yeah.
now. The worst kept secret. United are terrible at releasing details via social media like this and then waiting until like 3 days later to officially confirm it. But Ralph Rangnick's in charge for 6 months at least in an interim basis, taking over from Michael Carrick. Me and Dave both said we wanted this. We both said this was like the kind of step the club should have made to look like they were serious about organising themselves, first of all. He's the kind of guy that hasn't really won anything or that much at club level. So I'm not sure if that mentality is going to be there straight away for winning trophies, but certainly from like an organising the team point of view, it's a step in the right direction, surely.
Yeah, so I'm going to play the role of Dave here and assume the worst on the board because the only thing I will say is, well, there's a couple of things. You're right. Information gets leaked out Man United so easily. What's funny is
Terrible.
that was the exact opposite for years. United's transfer business was always dealt with very under wraps and things were always dealt with very calmly. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, United are signing Berbatov when we thought he was going somewhere else. So it's weird to see this kind of change in mentality of it's just so easy to know anything about Man United. I wonder if this one is because maybe it was just the most logical decision, so therefore it was quite visible to anyone. The thing that worries me about it, before I get onto the positives of it, is the talk is it's interim manager to the end of the season and then a consultancy role at the end. That's a cop out to me. A consultant says, okay, this is what I think you should do. And the club can go, okay, cool, thanks. But no on this occasion. If they'd given him a director of football role at the end of it, because it's a 2-year consultancy role. So it's not part-time.
Well, we don't officially have a director of football as a position. So I think they'll probably review what that consultancy role will look like. Let's face it, a director of football is a consultation role about how the club should be run. So it may well still be that.
Sort of. But I do think there is a lot more power that comes with that title than a consultant. To me, it looks like an opportunity for them to say, yeah, we've got the fans on board by getting someone logical in, but we will still make business decisions over football decisions because we don't give this guy all the power. If he was the director of football, it's a lot more transparent as to what the club's aims are then. Whereas this is just Ferguson's technically a consultant now. Apparently, all the talk was Solskjaer was lined up to be sacked before, and Ferguson said, let's keep him for a little bit longer. So who knows what this role actually means? But it's a good appointment, particularly for this season, because although you're right, he's not been a serial winner. If you look at the level of clubs he's been at, one thing he's always done is stabilise. He got Schalke to a Champions League semi-final not that long ago, and they're not even in the top division anymore. He really helped Leipzig push on to where they are now and get them to. I think he finished third with Leipzig in his first spell and helped develop the likes of Hasenhüttl, who, all right, he's having a bit of an indifferent time at Southampton now, but you can see a lot of coaching potential there.
Definitely.
And he's got a clear football style of play. And that's something United have lacked for 3 years now.
Yeah.
They had counter-attacking United, but it was no structure. It's like the thing that is so harsh on Solskjaer, but if I go to work, so I work at a school, if I took my football club, I might say to the kids, right, I want you to counter-attack. I am a football coach, so I can tell them that because I know what a counter-attack is, but I'm not going to give them enough direction to work it efficiently and coherently as a system. That's what Solskjaer did. He went, yeah, counter-attack. There was no how, why.
Yeah.
Whereas Rangnick, a lot of people will credit him with what the Gegenpress is. And the style that German football is taking now, he's almost like known as like the godfather of it. So I think he makes sense. He's developed a lot of good young players in his time as a manager. So the likes of Greenwood, Sancho, they will really benefit from his stewardship. I think it'd be interesting to see how he gets on with Ronaldo.
Yeah.
But he was a man in demand across his career. He's obviously experienced board level and the touchline, which I think is vital for Man United right now. And it's good to finally see him in England. Obviously, he was linked with the England job, wasn't he, before Southgate got it? So
yeah, weirdly, I forgot about that.
He's a name that will compete with the likes of Tuchel and Klopp, which United haven't had for a long time. Now, those managers will come up against Man United and think, we've got to think about how they're going to play. We've got to address the tactician that they've got in the dressing room. Whereas they haven't had to do that before. So I think it makes sense. Just depends where they go from there afterwards, really.
Yeah, I think that's the worrying thing is the unknown. Like you said, the lack of a director of football guarantee still leaves too many questions. And what direction they take in terms of the permanent manager, you'd imagine they'd start, or they should start, talking about connecting with that person now. Or they should have one person at the top of their list who they definitely want. I'm not so confident that's the case. I think they might leave it till 6 months down the line and then start looking. Do you know what I mean? That's the way United seem to operate these days.
The thing I read today is that Pochettino is still the favourite to take over. It's weird to me that the favourite for the job would be the same before and after Rangnick. Because what's the point in bringing in a consultant to tell you who your next manager should be if you're just going to go with the person that you wanted in the first place? Pochettino has been linked with Man United for 4 years now, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's not a Rangnick appointment if you do bring Pochettino in. That's not to say that his style of play wouldn't really suit Rangnick's stewardship. I think actually it probably would. And Pochettino is not getting his style across at PSG because he likes to press from the front. He likes to be intense. And he's got Neymar, Mbappe, and Messi as his front three now. So he's never going to get that. So that makes sense in some ways. But again, it just screams of the club not really having that much of a plan or knowing what to do with the people that they do have. There's also talk that Woodward's going to stay on for a bit longer now as well, because he was meant to be leaving this month, right? Or next month, sorry.
Yeah, it was meant to be the end of the year, basically, yeah. So I don't know what the thinking is there. But yeah, again, this moving of the goalposts of what they were going to do is just disrupting everything. I think you're wrong about Pochettino. I don't think he's somebody that would like having a Rangnick figure above him in any way, shape or form, because he's already unhappy with the PSG model. I think he quite likes a level of control with transfers, especially to fit the characters of his team. And that's the important thing for him. He identifies characters first.
Yeah.
That's out of his hands at PSG. And I think he probably would be if Rangnick was in charge above him.
I think the difference there is he's dealing with two very different characters. So Leonardo at PSG, he is not about the footballing brain or the personality, like you say, or even a style. Look at PSG's transfer window. They signed Messi because if you can sign Messi, why wouldn't you? But it wasn't part of a strategy. If you look at the rest of the profile of the players that they signed, Hakimi, Donnarumma, that's not Messi. And then they bring in Ramos as well.
You say that, but they weren't. He didn't want Donnarumma. He was happy with Navas, so he's been given Donnarumma because the opportunity arose. A bit like the Ronaldo situation at United.
Rangnick, though, is more logical than that, I think. So Pochettino could appreciate that. Look, it's the same as anyone. If someone is telling you what to do, you want to know that they know what they're doing. Leonardo doesn't know what he's doing and has proved that because PSG have had unlimited wealth for however long and not reached their main objective. So at least with Rangnick, if he's trying to achieve things on a football basis, I think Pochettino could appreciate and learn from that because he's still quite a young coach who hasn't won anything, let's not forget. So he maybe just has to humble himself enough to go, this is a huge job if I take the Man United job. And the support I will get from an experienced person who knows the club by then as well will be valuable. And it's only 2 years. So if Pochettino could have 2 years under Rangnick and then kick on and just develop it for himself, that makes sense.
Okay, putting it like that, yeah, possibly. It's that football figurehead above him that makes the difference, really, isn't it? But I can only hope that we've got Ten Hag in mind at the end of the season.
Is that what
you'd rather have? This repeatedly, yeah, because if he finishes the season with Ajax on a high, which it looks like he's going to in some shape or form, his stock would be super high. If we can already send the groundwork down now with this appointment to get him in charge come the end of the season, come with some kind of agreement, I think that would be the perfect scenario because the setup at Ajax is very modern. They've got this director of football model with Overmars and Van der Sar there. I'm hoping United are looking to build something similar to that. It's quite a modern setup. But again, that's a bit of a departure from what United have been doing in the past.
I think he needs to be 2 jobs away from Man United. The only reason I say that is because there have been plenty of managers that have done very well in the Eredivisie, come over to England or gone over to a big job and it's not worked. Look at De Boer. He was absolutely fantastic at Ajax. Could not cut it at Inter Milan. Could not cut it at Crystal Palace. Because when you're at a club like Ajax, who, let's remember as well, in the last 2-3 years have sold the likes of De Jong, De Ligt, Sanchez, made a lot more money than any other club in Holland has been able to make. It's not an easy job, of course it's not. But Ajax have a system of play that they play from the age of 4 all the way through.
Yeah, true.
So we know he knows how to play Ajax football. Can he play Man United football or whatever Man United want it to be? For me, Ten Hag should go to someone like Dortmund next and then look for Barcelona, Man United, Real Madrid, wherever that needs to be. The jump from Ajax to elite level, I think, is bigger than people estimate. So although he's doing well in the Champions League, doesn't always translate to a different league like that. So to me, Pochettino is a safer appointment because we've seen the success of him at Tottenham. At least at that level, you know he can bring something and he knows the English game well. That would be my argument.
I think I'm just worried about the kind of Pochettino we would get if that was the case, because he seems at a pretty low ebb at the minute.
You know, he doesn't.
Yeah, I think from his kind of peak of the Champions League final, I think from then on it's just been a downward spiral. And at the minute, I think with this PSG, he seems to be stuck in a job that he doesn't really enjoy. Whereas I think if we had Ten Hag at his peak, really, coming out of hopefully winning the Eredivisie, you'd imagine, and going deep into the Champions League as well, I'd hope that would give some kind of momentum to the team that he'd inherited United. I think that's the thing for me. I don't know what Pochettino we'd get. Certainly not the Pochettino 4 years ago, that's for sure.
It's interesting. And there are a couple of other names that were linked. Obviously, there was the talk of Brendan Rodgers. I can't see that happening myself. Obviously, there is... If Hasenhüttl has an amazing season with Southampton out of nowhere, maybe he gets talked about again because he's already connected to Rangnick. And obviously there's been talk of him getting a bigger job for a long time. But I think it's going to be the same thing again, where there's only one logical appointment or available appointment. And if Pochettino is looking for a way out of PSG, we don't know the same of Ten Hag at Ajax necessarily. So I think it's a bit inevitable, if I'm honest.
Well, if you think about the kind of football we can expect to see then from Rangnick, basically, I think the first step we'll see is a structure within the starting 11 and players in roles that are suited to them rather than square pegs and round holes. I think that has to be the first step, surely.
So he plays a different formation to what United play now very often as well. He's quite known for a 4-2-2-2. So I wonder whether he will look at getting two strikers on the pitch, which would allow for Ronaldo to be there for his finishing and guide someone like Greenwood, or Ronaldo and Cavani doing most of his running for him. Or we might see Ronaldo take coaching from someone who knows what they're doing and be a different forward. But I think that will be the interesting thing to see how he gets that squad of players to fit in. Because actually, if you can bring in a better midfield option than either Fred or McTominay, having two advanced sort of attacking midfielders allows for either Fernandes and Van der Beek, which would be fantastic to see that in the team, or let Pogba advance more. Now, if it were me, I'd be tempted to try and get Pogba to sit behind Fernandes and Van der Beek and see whether you can coach that into him, because I think he's good enough for it. The only thing he lacks is sometimes he can be a bit too complacent on the ball in deep areas. I think Rangnick will be a good coach for someone like him. The biggest talk is that it's up to him who has their contract renewed. So we could see the likes of Jesse Lingard and Pogba have either a brilliant 6 months to try and impress the new manager, or they've decided they're going to opt out and therefore he's lost the idea of selection. I think United have been craving style. United fans have wanted to see a style of play. If Rangnick comes in, completely changes the formation away from what the coaching staff there currently have, I wonder how many of them remain. But it's an open door. And if you're going to bring someone in on a 6-month contract, but also then keep him at the club, you are kind of letting him have a blank canvas. So maybe we won't see Michael Carrick there for long, for example.
Yeah, true. I think that's the next sort of talking point that United fans have got. Will he get rid of all these Solskjaer kind of backroom staff that were hanging on to his playing reputation in the past, and this nostalgic backroom team that were former players? I mean, are we going to go and see something that actually suits the next man that's in charge? Fingers crossed, I hope so, because I think from a United fan's perspective, Carrick's had 2 games and he's won 1 and drawn 1, which is a turnaround.
Yeah,
but he basically played Ole ball against Villarreal anyway. It was kind of the same setup in most respects. So I can't see him in the backroom staff being a massive departure from the way it's been. So fingers crossed. I think to make a system work, Rangnick's going to need specialists everywhere, isn't he? Let's face it.
Yeah, and he's got such an attention to detail that it wouldn't surprise me if he brought his own coach and staff in.
Yeah, I kind of hope so, because I feel like I'm sick of looking at the past now. I'm sick of harking back to 99, and Solskjaer even going on about it kind of made me cringe at the end. It really did. So I think a clean break is what's needed anyway.
Yeah.
Speaking of clean breaks, Arsenal seem to have turned a corner and made their own clean break. They got absolutely thumped the other week, but I think we knew that was kind of their level against that kind of team. But they beat Newcastle pretty convincingly 2-0 this time round. Not exactly a surprise. Newcastle were terrible. But this team was, I think, an average age of 24. Arsenal are looking like a team with an identity now, aren't they?
Yeah, 100%. It's really weird because they've slowly developed really good squad depth without anyone really paying that much attention to it. So in hindsight, what a good window they had. There are a couple of players in there that I would have really questioned the signing of. I think the idea of signing Ramsdale was obviously talked about really heavily. The kind of money they spent on Ben White, the fact that they brought in Tavares when their best player really was already their left back, and Tomiyasu not really finding an elite club and ended up at Arsenal, were all things that were put under a lot of question, and actually have all been pretty good decisions. First player to mention really for me was Tavares. I think overtaking Kieran Tierney was a really hard task, and to me the assumption was they were signing him because Tierney's fitness is so sporadic, but actually Tierney was on the bench for this game. Tavares has played his way into that side 11, and the intensity that he plays with, his recovery pace, he reminds me a lot of Kyle Walker, because he's got the pace to kind of get up and down really quickly. He offers a really good threat going forward. He got another assist today, not today, in the game, sorry, and also manages to bolt back and cover positions incredibly well. So he's been a really good signing. But the main thing that's worked for Arsenal is the fact that the young players that had so much promise, a lot of them are living up to it now, to the point where someone like Martinelli is coming off the bench to score. Now, if you talk to Arsenal fans, which I unfortunately have to do really often, they will all say that Martinelli was this breakthrough prospect, and he was the best young player that the club had, and they really wanted to see more of him. And then he was unfortunately hit with a lot of injuries. Now, a lot of people might question, why isn't Martinelli getting more game time? Why isn't he developing? Well, because in that time, you had Saka come through on the left-hand side, Smith Rowe can play on the left-hand side, and actually they've just quietly built like a wealth of talent without spending too much money really on those players. And it was really easy for them to pick Newcastle off. This is maybe not Newcastle, because I think Newcastle haven't beaten Arsenal in like 18 games. It's ridiculous. But a team at that level, you wouldn't have put it past Arsenal to drop a point or two here. So it's nice to see them getting a comfortable win. Newcastle offered nothing. They had two options. Shelby was going to shoot from 40 yards, or they were going to try and get Callum Wilson in behind the back line, but the recovery pace was too good. So Maximan was anonymous, which you don't expect. They brought Almiron on, and he continued to kind of do nothing. And I don't think Eddie Howe would have looked at anything there and thought, yeah, I've got a good squad here that is capable of staying up. They are going down unless they do something drastic in January right now. They were awful. But Arsenal did a professional job. It was really easy for them to cut through them in the end.
Yeah, I think the Arsenal turning point has been probably the North London derby for me. I think since then, their players have sort of slowly come to some kind of fitness, haven't they? Their starting 11's taken shape. And that's when the identity sort of sunk in. I think you're right about the Tierney dropping to the bench, that situation. He was particularly positive player for them, wasn't he? When they were struggling, he was still one of the players that you looked at and went, yeah, potentially he's one of their only class players. But Tavares played really well. His level of energy is so high. And I think that's just the same with the whole team. They just exude like youth, don't they? And you can see that the fans have got a ton of patience for them for that reason.
Yeah. I think the problem with Tierney is, as good as Tierney is, one of the most key things to any defence, and any manager will tell you this, is consistency. So I hate to go on about them, but look at Villa last season. Villa's defensive record was incredible last season.
Yeah.
And their back five, we've already talked about, picks themselves. All of a sudden, Arsenal's back five is completely new. So they have Ramsdale in goal, who they signed this summer, along with Tomiyasu, Tavares, and Ben White, all signed this summer, and Gabriel, who came in last year. So it doesn't surprise me necessarily to see that it took them a few games to get used to each other, to gel. And obviously Ramsdale didn't start the season, Leno did. Now that they're looking at a bit more of a consistent back five, they can play with a system. And that will really suit these young players who will need a lot of guidance and a lot of coaching. That familiarity is going to suit them. And then in front of them, the midfield's get a bit more stable. Partey's managed to remain fit. Lokonga's come in and looked quite good, actually. Yeah. So that structure is really new. The longest serving player at the club in terms of the first team was Aubameyang. And really, he's not been there that long. What, 3 years maybe?
I think this is his fourth season, yeah.
Past that, you're looking at very young players who are new to Premier League football, yet Arteta has got them clicking now. It was always going to take some time. I'll be honest, I hold my hands up, and I'll probably sit up this podcast. I didn't think Arteta was capable of getting them to click. I hadn't seen anything in him to say he has a style of play, he has man management, he's going to get these kids to develop in the right way. He's slowly proving me and many, many others wrong. And I
think it's that stubbornness to stick with a system, even when it's not working at the time, because eventually it will come good. That takes a lot of balls to do, but he's stuck with it. And credit to the Arsenal board. They've been patient with him. They backed him heavily this summer. Yeah. And all of those players that we were sort of saying, is Ben White worth 50 million? Is Aaron Ramsdale really a £28 million goalkeeper? Yeah. Turns out potentially he could well be, because they've invested in the future rather than now. But to see them performing now, I think is kind of indication for Arteta and his vision. It's actually coming together quite nicely.
So the best thing for them is obviously the fact that the football calendar is incredibly congested and they don't have European football this year. And at the start of the season, Arsenal fans will say that's gutting. But would you rather be Spurs or Arsenal right now? Like, it's not even a conversation. Spurs look an absolute joke. I mean, they're losing to the lowest ranked team in their competition when they are playing in Europe. And they just all look shattered. But Arsenal have very few internationals in their starting 11. All right, they've got Saka and Smith Rowe in the England setup and Odegaard for Norway. Aubameyang will still travel. But their back five don't really do much when it comes to international duty. No. And then also, they're not in European competition. So they have a lot of recovery time. And when fourth place looks up for grabs, because let's be honest, top three writes itself. But the likes of, United if they can kick on, Arsenal, maybe Spurs because they've got Conte, and West Ham, obviously, they're going to be competing for that fourth spot now. Arsenal have the advantage because they haven't got any European football. So with the squad depth improving slowly, that's a really, really good sign for this young team and young manager. What can they produce?
Well, I think when you consider the horrendous start they had, they're sitting 5th in the Premier League.
Yeah.
That's some turnaround, isn't it? With not much time to kind of make it happen. It's probably kind of testament to the poor quality of the teams around them at the moment and the inconsistency they're showing. But is 5th where they're actually at in terms of quality? Do you think that's a fair position for them?
It's hard to say because there are a lot of teams that are underperforming. We would have expected better of Leicester this season. We definitely would have expected better of United this season. You could probably argue the same thing about Spurs. Do Spurs have a better squad than Arsenal? No, probably not. But they've probably got a couple of better individuals. And Conte is obviously a fantastic manager. So Arsenal were always going to be around the sort of top 8 teams, but there are enough anomalies in the Premier League to think that they could easily slip above or below that. If Everton and Villa had wonderful starts to the season, which those squads are probably capable of if fully fit, Arsenal could be in a different position right now. Equally, if Liverpool lost Van Dijk again and had the injury crisis they had last year, Arsenal could climb again. So there is a bit of congestion. The only difficulty is it does look like the top 3 are just going to run away with it. There's 4 teams in the league with positive goal difference. That's shocking.
Crazy, isn't it?
It's just because the top 3 are just battering everyone.
That's what I mean. By some distance as well, they're in massive double figures ahead of everyone else, which is unheard of.
Yeah, we're talking about Arsenal doing well, but I think Newcastle scored more goals than them this season before the weekend. And Liverpool just put 4 past them the week before, but they still look like they're doing well. It's a weird season to gauge. I think there's not a wealth of striking talent in the league right now. Like if you look around the league, some of the teams that were lower down that usually had someone who pop up with 10, 15 goals. Southampton had Danny Ings last year, Chris Wood at Burnley, players like that. All of a sudden, who do you look to? Like this England squad is getting more and more interesting because there's no one pushing Harry Kane anymore, really. No. Calvert-Lewin's out. Watkins is playing quite well. Bamford's been out for a while. Danny Ings isn't doing that well. Adam Armstrong looks awful at Southampton, in my opinion. So the bottom of the league is just slowly falling away because they just do not have the quality that Chelsea, City, and Liverpool are able to produce. So Arsenal have got a space that they can fill with the quality they do have.
I think we said this in our pre-season predictions that middle 10 teams is kind of hard to predict where any of them will finish because they're so similar in quality. But we put Arsenal within those middle 10 teams. I think that was unfair. I think in hindsight, with the signings they made, they were slow burners, but I think that was probably harsh for them to sort of say they'd be mid-table or ish, thereabouts. They just had a slow start that's coming together better now. I think maybe top 6 is realistic for them.
It's still a long season, and at some point they'll lose Partey again, whether that's to the African Cup of Nations or injury, because he's obviously got a difficult record. There's still talk of Aubameyang going to Barcelona in January. I don't know how they'll afford it, but with Aguero's wages looking like they're going to be gone, maybe Arsenal will be prepared to take the hit with some of the young players they've got coming through. So anything could happen still. We're only a third of the way into the season. But the good thing is Arsenal are in the conversation. When was the last time Arsenal were in the conversation for a top 4 place, realistically, particularly at this sort of stage in the season? So it's progress.
Yeah, it's been probably about a decade, I think. I don't think that's harsh to say. But no, you're right. Arsenal potentially back in the mix. Good to see. We've got some midweek fixtures in the Premier League this week. So I may well steal you for a quick insight for a quick midweek podcast and get Dave's opinion as well. Maybe John, if he's up for it, just to talk about the Premier League's action, because there's a lot going on this week, isn't there?
Definitely, yeah. I'm a bit nervous about Villa's trip we're at home to Man City.
Well, that's another thing, isn't it? Whenever anybody who's in contention for sort of top 6 or mid-table and above comes up against one of these top 3 teams, the golfing quality becomes so apparent, doesn't it? It's huge.
That's what will decide it. The team that can get the most results against those sort of clubs when the others don't, I suppose. Yeah. But we'll see. I'm not overly optimistic. And obviously, you're playing on Thursday, right?
Say that again, sorry.
United are playing on Thursday, right?
United are playing... Yeah, Arsenal. It's an Arsenal game, isn't it? So
Yes. Yeah, that's right. I've thought about them weirdly. Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's a busy week. There's games on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and United is Arsenal. Yeah, so
that'll be a good
interesting
one.
Yeah,
Good one to
definitely.
measure where United are at and whether Rangnick even is there or whether Carrick has it still.
Well, I think Rangnick's still got to sort out a work permit from what I know. So,
really?
But I imagine he'll have a big hand in the to the game. Maybe have some kind of hand in what he wants the team to do prior to him coming. But we'll see. Exciting times for United for the first time in a while.
And maybe we can start talking about them. Maybe they'll just blend into boringness and we don't have to talk about them every week.
You know, I'll take boring for now, mate. I really will. It's been an up and down season. Anyway, appreciate your time, mate. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching as well. If you do like what you see, hit the subscribe button if you can on YouTube, because we are building a nice little channel here, hopefully. But until next week, mate, thank you.
No worries.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers, man.